What is up, everyone? Jeremy here, and I am super excited to finally, officially announce the release of my first plugin. This is a guitar pedal plugin designed to go in front of your high gain amp sims, and I call it the Howler. All right, so first up, let's just walk through the different features that the Howler offers. Then we'll talk about some tips and tricks, and I'll play some stuff here so you can hear some audio samples. But first, the features. And there aren't many to even go over, really. So the first thing is it does offer input and output meters, and you can see they offer both left and right channels. We have an input, so you can pull it back 10 dB or boost it up 10 dB. We have an output, the same thing, pull it back or boost it up 10 dB. And then from there in the Howler itself, in the pedal, you have this new handy mix knob. This was added in version 1.1, which is what I'm using here. This was just released this week. And then the switch on the bottom does work, and it is a bypass. So you can turn it off, bypass the whole plugin here just like that, or turn it back on. And that's it. That's essentially all there is to it. And the reason for that is because under the hood, what is being done is there's a few things, and this is all kind of based on a lot of stuff that I tend to do frequently in my own songs and in my own mixes, even for client mixes. And that's things like taming the low end or adding high and low pass filters on DI signals, sending them through something like, you know, an 808 or a TS9 tube screamer type thing to add some additional harmonics and saturation through its tone stack. And then, you know, some additional stuff that before it goes into an amp sim. And these are all things that I often do, and I figured, let me just see about creating a plugin that does all of this stuff in one go for me. And that's exactly what the Howler does. All right, now let's quickly talk about some tips or tricks that you can do with the Howler to change up the tone. And really, there's kind of just one big one I want to point out. And this is in direct response to some questions I've had online, or feature requests really, to add a gain knob to the plugin so that you can increase the gain to get more saturation out of it, you know, because for certain amps it may work better to have more saturation, and in some it may work better to be able to pull it down to get less saturation out of this plugin before it goes into your amp sim. And that is absolutely true, and you can do that with the Howler right now. In fact, the input here, if you pull this back, it will push a lower signal into the tone stack of the Howler so that you get less saturation, less breakup, less clipping, and all of that. So if it's the opposite is true. If you push it harder, it's going to give you additional saturation. Now, I would recommend adjusting the output dependent on what you're doing with the input. And one of the features I do have on the roadmap is an automatic adjustment. So if you pull back, just say like the input by 5 dB, then the output is boosted up by 5 dB. It doesn't do that automatically for you yet, so you have to do it manually. But let's just say I want a little bit more saturation, so I boost this up around 5 dB. Then what I would probably do is pull this back, maybe not necessarily 5 dB, but you know, around that range, just to kind of make sure the output signal is roughly even. But maybe if I want a hotter signal with more saturation, I can just leave the output as is, and it'll push that more saturated, hotter signal into the amp. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and see what this thing sounds like. And the first thing I'm gonna do is just reset all these settings. I'm gonna pull the mix, it is at 0. So this is doing nothing right now. And this is going into the Omega AmpWorks Granifier from NeuralDSP. You can see the settings I have here, and then we'll just kind of play on this for a second so you can hear and be oriented with what it sounds like without a boost. And I want to point out that the built-in plumes is turned off, so this is just the DI signal going into the amp. All right, so that is the Omega Granifier, Omega AmpWorks Granifier by itself. So let's go ahead and now start pulling up the mix knob on the Howler and see what we get. So we'll just start at 25% and see what we get. That's only 25%, folks. Really, already I can tell, because of the processing of what's going on with the low end filtering and the EQ and some of the saturation, it's already tightened up the tone. I'm not hearing as much woofiness. It's pushing a hotter signal into the amp already at only 25%, so we get a little bit more breakup and saturation from the amp. And this is only 25%, so let's go ahead and bring it up to 50% and see what we get. 50. Incredible. Incredible. So again, this is just now pushing an even hotter signal. It's now cutting even more low end, boosting some of the upper mid range, cutting a little bit more of the top end. So some of those filters, the high and low pass filters happening within the processing of the plugin, pushing more saturation into the amp and just an overall hotter signal. So it's now even tighter and we get more breakup and more saturation out of the amp. And this is only halfway up. So let's go ahead and pull it up to 75%. Yes, me likey. Same thing, right? A hotter signal, more saturation, even less low end. And when I say less low end, I'm not talking about like massive changes each time, but every time I pull this up, a little bit more percentage we go up, the little bit less low end we're gonna get because of the processing in the plugin. And and even more specifically is because we're now using 75% the processed signal and 25% the DI, that also means there's gonna be less low end because I have a lot of low end coming from the DI. In fact, let's turn off the amp for a second and pull this back down to 0% and show you what's happening here. So this is all DI. Now 25% Howler. So you can already hear how we lost a little bit of low end and we're getting some of that saturation in the upper mids now. So we pull this up to 50%. Even more saturation in the upper mids. I'm hearing it in some of the lower mids now, and there's even less low end from the DI signal. So 75%. So even far less low end now, a lot more saturation coming through, and 100%. So there you go. You can hear all that saturation coming through, all the, the low end that we ducked out, even the top end that from the low and high pass filters within the plugin. And now this is a great opportunity for me to demonstrate the trick that I mentioned earlier with using the input to boost or even reduce the saturation within the plugin. So have a listen to this. If I pull back the input by 10 dB all the way down, but then I boost the output to make it up. So listen to this, it should sound a lot less saturated. Far less saturation, just more volume, right? There is a little bit of saturation there, but far less, right? So take it back to what it was. This is by default. So a lot more saturation there. Now, if I boost the input all the way up by 10 dB, pull the output all the way down by dB, listen how much saturation we get now. You can even see, because I'm boosting the input so far, it says it's clipping a little bit, which I want to point out is completely fine on all of these modern computers. They have the, like 32-bit floating point precision or whatever the hell that specifically means for audio processing. But all I know is it means we don't have to worry about signals going above 0, which mean clipping. You're not actually losing signal, so it's totally fine. And we're not clipping a ton here. It's just the hardest hits that show red. So there you go. There's an example of how you can use the input to add or reduce the saturation. So let's go ahead and pull the Howler back down to 50%, which I think sounded really good here. I had a good blend of the DI and the process signal, and then use this trick to kind of change up some of the saturation here in this amp. And I'm going to actually pull the gain down in the amp a little bit more so we can maybe hear a little bit some of that saturation coming from the pedal. So let's see what happens here. All right, so let's go ahead and boost the saturation from the pedal and see what we get. I'm just gonna turn it all the way up. And I'm not gonna turn the output all the way down because I want still a pretty hot signal to come in, so I'm gonna leave it maybe around 6.8 or so. Kind of get into too much territory there, so I'm going to pull this back right around 75%, pull the output down a little bit. Yeah, so you can see how adjusting this input really makes a big difference. So let's pull it all the way down now, so it's just kind of more of a clean boost. Boost up the output. So you can clearly hear how there's less saturation overall there. It's just more of a clean boost. So we're getting more saturation from the amp because we're pushing a hotter signal into it, but it's not breaking up like it was before because of the saturation from the Howler. So, yeah. All right, folks, that is the Howler. I'm gonna leave it right there. Now, you can find the link to download this for free, absolutely free, down in the description below. If you like this video, you like the Howler, do me a favor, hit subscribe down below so you don't miss any future content or any new announcements on new plugins or updates to this one. And hit like down below on this video if you found this helpful at all, or if you like the tones I got here, or if you like the plugin, that would really help me out. Now with that, I want to say thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoy the plugin. If you use it and you put up any content, tag me in it so that I can check it out. And with that, Thank you for your support.